Hey everyone, welcome back. There might be some interest in this. This is my project engine. It is a 2000 block, 87 heads, and I don't know how it's going to work. It's very, very interesting because the LAs actually have a oil passage. It runs off one of the journals for the cam. I have a 360 block over there. It's a 79, but I want this block because it has a roller. Like the pins are here for the roller, so I can do it relatively cheap, if that makes sense. The LA heads accept the LA intake. I can just put a points distributor in it and fire it up on the floor super easy. I don't even have a car to put this engine in. My 408 over here is obviously going in the Diplomat. Have a little bit of stuff that I changed with that too. Anyways, so the biggest problem is the LA heads oil off of a cam journal up to the head, and then it goes, so the passage feeds up to the rocker shaft through one of the rocker bolts, fills the rocker shaft full of oil, and the ports point down at it. So underneath the rockers, they're constantly getting a full fluid or full fill with motor oil. They're being lubricated that way. On the Magnum, they feed through the push rods, but on the LAs, it also looks like they have the option to feed through the push rods because the LA stamped rockers have a hole, but it's not drilled in the exact same spot as the Magnum. So yes, 360 Magnum, LA timing cover, LA oil pan, LA heads, 408 stroker. This is an 86 block. It is 40 over. It's got a purple shaft in it. Edelbrock 53cc RPM heads. A Welland intake. That's a slug out of that 360. Oh yeah, and there's the battery and the fuel cell and the dip because we're relocating it over there. There's the oil or the air hat for it. Changing everything to AN lines. I was originally just going to run like a barbed end like this, but these point straight out and they'll contact my header. So if I have it come out on a 90, I can tuck them back up. I can utilize this bolt here, which also connects to the transmission for a support, so I can utilize that to also hold my oil line for my relocation kit nice and close. I can tuck it up. I can do lots more with that in that sense. So yeah, these, by the way, are also a 302 port close chambered head. I did notice the difference in the Magnum versus the LA. You are a little bit below deck surface here with the factory piston. I'm sticking with the factory piston with the LA head. And the bottom end is obviously staying stock. I want to try and stick with a stock short block with a truck RV cam, 302 heads, factory rockers, which I'm modifying the rocker shafts to be able to accept. I honestly don't know if it's going to work. I don't really have any money tied up here, so I can justify it that way, I guess. I'm going to look for a truck to put this engine in just to test it out, see what it's going to be like. It's going to be a 2-barrel engine. Yeah. So these are the 302 casting heads. Just doing a little bit of bowl work. They're coming up very nice. This is one I just started the other day. That's one that's done. See, we're nice and far away from that valve seat right at the top there. We didn't get into it at all. This is a cast car 2-barrel intake. I thought about using this, but the ports are so big. This intake supposedly made 400 horse, but it's a 2-barrel with a 2-barrel Rochester, but the port is massive. It's huge compared to these. So maybe that'll help you guys out a little bit. See how small that port is? Nothing. She flows nice. So, I'm not going to use this. I'm not going to use this intake. I am going to use a 500 CFM Edelbrock on a marine intake on the 360 because those ports are also very small, which will help with velocity. The only thing that sucks is this is a single plane, so it's going to be better for power in the higher RPM range, which I'm not really looking for. I'm looking for power in the bottom end range, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to correct it. I might play with it a bit. I don't know. Yeah, so there's that. I feel like there was something else too. Oh yeah, my other interesting thing I ran into, these are 273 heads. So the 273 head has a very, very small piston. Well, it has a very small combustion chamber because if you look at the outside here, this is actually where the fire ring for the head gasket would sit. It's not a fire ring. It's like the compression ring or whatever you would call it. I'm not an expert on head gaskets. I know that I break them and I fix them. So the 273 heads, which are small port, they're in there a little bit. They're not super far in there. So 273 heads, I'll grab that piston. I'll show you guys. So this is a 2000 piston. It's different than, I'm going to use those heads on a 79 standard bore block. So this will be the engine I use. Those are standard bore 360 pistons. You can see the difference. These have more of an oval to the dish. These are perfectly round. I'm very curious to see what happens because that is a lot larger than even just the combustion chamber in the head. So theoretically, you want your air fuel mixture to always be in the center of the piston. Now, if the piston is dished all the way around and it's also smaller than the combustion chamber in the head, then when you're compressing your air fuel mixture, the mixture is going to want to go to the center, to the burn point of the piston. I'm very curious to see what this is going to do. It might do nothing and I might just be blowing hot air, but we'll see. Maybe someday. Till then, I don't know. This is the rocker shafts that I was talking about, modifying them a little bit. These are barely, like, you can just barely catch your fingernail just barely falls into a little groove. They're not even a 1/16 deep because this is how the trunnion sits in the Magnum engine. So I've made my grooves just about as thick as these guys are, or about as deep as these guys are, sorry. Now this is a Magnum rocker shaft. You have this little plate at the top and you oil through the push rod right here. There's the push rod. You blow your oil through there off of the cam. So now when we go to the LA, which is the one I was playing with yesterday, this one. When you go to the LA, it's offset, but I nerdled it a little bit just to get a slight oil passage to the center. Now this is offset to the center of, like, you have your little holes drilled right here, which also lands into an oil passage, I guess you would call it, or an oil groove in the stamped steel rocker, which rides on this. Now I cut these in. This also has the one here, so ideally this rocker shaft almost has more oil than this rocker shaft, except now my oil is going to fall out the sides, where before, when the trunnion's inside, that can't happen. I guess it would still fall out the bottom, but very minimal. I don't know. All I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this up so your oil passages are going to point straight up, and I'm not going to dump very much money into this engine, and I'm going to see what happens, because why not? My mind is going crazy. I'm super bored. Yeah. Those are the roller lifters for the 360. Obviously they need to be cleaned up, but they're in very, very nice shape. So yeah, if you're interested to see what happens, this is all LA and Magnum stuff going together. So yeah. Peace out, Girl Scout.